The Marvel Cinematic Universe has had some great and some not so great villains. Despite the sometimes dubious quality of their character, you can't help but admit that these guys are some of the biggest baddies out there. So to that end, we're going to go and rank the most powerful among them. This list will be based off of how much of a threat these villains are, and they will be ranked according to their power levels. That being said, let's dive right into it. Let's kick off the list with the powerful sorcerer, Casellius. He was the main antagonist in the first Doctor Strange movie. Being a former student of the Ancient One, Casellius could have easily been the candidate for the spot of Sorcerer Supreme had it not been for the unquenchable thirst of power. This had him turn to Dormammu, the Lord of Dark Dimension, for aid. And suffice it to say, this put him and his followers at odds with their buddies back at Kamartaj. With that sort of dark magic to back him up, he makes for one hell of an enemy, especially for an inexperienced Doctor Strange. If he is so powerful, then why is he so far down on this list, you might ask? Well, that's because he is nothing more than a henchman. His power is tied to his overlord, Dormammu. Actually, his entire existence is. He was almost ripped away from reality just because his boss cut a deal with Doctor Strange. So yeah, not that scary. Up next, we have Red Skull. Before the Guardian of the Soul Stone on Vormir and a discount cryptic gypsy, this Jedi Master in hiding was actually the first real supervillain that we saw in the MCU, chronologically speaking. He was a failed attempt at producing a super soldier. He was left permanently disfigured by the experiment, but got the enhancements that come from being exposed to super soldier serum. That means that his speed and strength are on par with those of Captain America. But to make things worse, he is also the general of a German militant faction and the head of Hydra, an anti-freedom organization in the MCU. Combine all of those things and put them into one package, you get one hell of a bad guy. While watching WandaVision, everyone was on the lookout for Mephisto to explain all the crazy things happening in Westview, but the real troublemaker was under our noses all along. The nosy neighbor Agnes, also known as Agatha Harkness. She is an ancient witch with an inconceivable amount of power. Now, a single witch might not seem like that much of a threat. After all, we have seen plenty of them faulty heroes without much trouble. But Agatha had long ago mastered the ability to absorb the powers of other magic users. That gives her an immense boost in power that allowed her to stand toe-to-toe with Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch. She also has possession of a tomb known as Darkhold, which is capable of changing the entire course of reality itself. Okay, so by this point, Loki should be considered to be more of an anti-hero than an actual villain. But he was the main antagonist in 2 MCU movies, one of which was a complete Avengers team-up, so it earns him a spot on this list. Loki's magic and his powers are limited only by his ability to concoct new schemes, which I'm sure knows no bounds. He is cunning and conniving, and as we saw in the Disney Plus TV show, he will always find ways to cause trouble in every version of the multiverse. This is also someone with very ambitious goals, which usually involves taking down some realm or other, but he can back up his endeavors with an intellect and powers to actually do so. But somehow the Avengers or his conscience always seems to get in the way. Ultron has to be the quintessential example of wasted potential in the MCU. He was basically a being that could infiltrate anything with a computer in it, and as such, he had access to literally every conceivable thing you could possibly need to know about the universe, making him the most intelligent thing on the planet. In addition to that, he cannot be killed as long as he has access to the internet, because he could just upload himself onto there and survive regardless if he had a physical form or not. But like so many MCU villains, he was taken down over the course of a single movie. Now it's time to move on to more extraterrestrial villains, because we all know that the bread and butter of Marvel's baddies can't be found on planet Earth, especially not this guy, since he is a literal planet. Ego is a celestial, or at least that's what he claims in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, meaning he is effectively a god. So when he revealed himself to be a villain, he became an instant threat to pretty much the entirety of existence. He could have very easily taken out everything in his path if it wasn't for the Guardians of the Galaxy who found his planet, and they were able to access to his core where they were able to take him out. He could have very easily taken out everything in his path if it wasn't for the Guardians of the Galaxy who found his planet and were able to get access to its core where they were able to take him out. Of all the Asgardian gods, Hela has to be one of the most powerful, standing second only to Odin in terms of what she can do. The fact that she is pure evil is evidently bad news, but she has an inherent weakness. Her powers are intrinsically tied to Asgard, which means that if it were to be annihilated, she would pretty much lose all of her powers. But while on Asgard, or the realms connected to it, she was the most powerful being there, and that made her conquest of the 9 realms a walk in the park. But when Surtur brought about Ragnarok by destroying Asgard, it had essentially wiped her abilities clean off, making her no more of a threat. Kang could very easily be the most powerful being we have seen in the MCU. As someone who has complete control over time and the ability to summon clouds that decimate everything in their path, there is a serious argument that Kang could top this list. But he isn't, and that's because he has yet to do anything. Everything we know about Kang is what we have come to know from the comics, which is a reasonable place to start. But, as we have seen over the course of 30 or so movies, Marvel isn't the best at sticking to the source material. So while Kang in the comics is someone you don't want to mess with, we just don't know exactly how his powers will translate over to the big screen. You have to admit that it would take a lot to scare the Ancient One, someone who possesses more magical abilities and knowledge than pretty much anyone in the Marvel Universe. And yet, Dormammu, the Lord of the Dark Realm, had her so frightened that she turned to using dark magic to keep him at bay. You could be thinking to yourself that Doctor Strange took him out easily. Yes, well that was because he had an Infinity Stone, but if he hadn't, Dormammu is a massive multiverse threat, and if he were to hatch another scheme to try to take Earth again, there would be nothing that could be done. And finally, topping off our list is the Mad Titan himself. I don't really think I have to say much about Thanos. He was the first being to yield the power of the 6 Infinity Stones, but really the only bad guy to win over our heroes. Achieving his goal of removing half of all sentient life in the galaxy from existence and leaving the Avengers in a lurch. And he is a menace to go up against even without the stones. With only a few of them, he had beat the Hulk. He took on the most powerful Avengers in a 3-on-1 showdown in Endgame without the stones, and literally removed the last stone from Vision's vibranium body. There is nothing this guy can't do. It took the combined effort of Thor and Captain Marvel to finally slay the Titan once and for all. That's it for this list, guys. Who do you think is the most dangerous villain? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, and as always, thanks for watching.